Hey guys, what's up? My name is Shirley and welcome back to my channel. This is episode 2 of my career series. If you missed episode 1 where I tapped into or I talked more about my career and what I do as a brand strategist, I will leave that linked up here as well as in the description box below. Today we're talking to one of my best friends and basically someone who is my older sister, Mindy, and she is currently a product manager at Google, but she actually started as a software engineer, but I'll let her get into that a little bit more, so let's just get started with the interview. Hi guys! Today we're going to get into what Mindy does and her job and how she got here and her just everything.
Excited to be here, excited to talk about my work, so
yay! Yeah. First off, just like, who are you? What do you do right now? And yeah, just kind of like explain a little bit of that.
Yeah, so I currently work as a product manager at Google up in the Bay Area in California.
What does a product manager do?
Yeah, that is a really good question. What is a product manager? And I have asked a lot of people this. I have received a lot of explanations. It is a job that is hard to define. I mean, to preface this, it's hard to define, so I'll do my best. But honestly, it's like one of those things that you don't really know until you've done the work. So a product manager, our work sits at the intersection of engineering, business, and design. And the overall description of a product manager is you are responsible for getting a product from A to Z, right? From ideation to design to execution to launch, and making sure that it's launched, that it launches well, that people are actually using it, that it is a good product. Product managers are a very generalist role. It's sort of like part of your job to kind of like fill in whatever gaps exist on your team. Depending on the team, depending on the company, you could be doing very drastically different things. So like even at Google, I know that the Chromebook team at Google, being a product manager on that team, they're super business focused, whereas some other teams may be a lot more technical focused, whereas some like the product management role is very design focused instead. And this is going to like differ from industry to industry, company to company. Product management is a fairly new and young role. Tech in general is a very young role, as a very young industry, and product management really, I think, came out, I hope I don't get this wrong, like the last few decades. Like only started within the last few decades, yeah.
So how did you, because you didn't start off as a product manager, what did you come from and what was your background with that? And yeah, we'll just start there. Yeah.
Definitely. My background is in software engineering, which is one of
classic Bay Area.
Very classic Bay Area. I got my Patagonia jacket.
Yes,
I'm repping the San Francisco vibe. Yeah, software engineer at Google. We are a dime a dozen in the Bay Area. There's a joke, like you throw a rock and you might hit 1 or 2 Google engineers, so like...
They're everywhere.
Literally everywhere. This is gonna sound a little like cliche, but like I feel like engineering just kind of runs in my family. Like it literally runs in my blood.
It actually does, yeah.
Yeah, so like my grandparents were all engineers. My father is an engineer. My mother was trained as an electrical engineer. They didn't really tell me to become an engineer, but it just happened.
Yeah.
So in high school, I joined my high school robotics club, and it just so happened that they needed a new programmer. So I was like, hey, yeah, let me look at what that's about. Taught myself how to do that. And that's where I got started. I never really questioned that there was another path for me. Even starting in high school, actually, my high school had like an internship program with Boeing, so I went and did that. That's how I did that. It was like...
your high school, I didn't know that.
Yeah. In college, I just sort of like rode that. I went back to Boeing for a year. After that, I just applied to like a ton of companies. Just like, because always like, I feel like getting internships, honestly, like getting that first thing on your resume, like the first real thing on your resume is always the hardest.
Yeah.
You just gotta apply to a bunch of stuff. I applied to a bunch, didn't hear back from like 90% of them. I like interviewed in 2 places, got one, and just like, okay, I'll go there.
Wait, when was this?
This was sophomore summer. I interned at a startup, which is now disbanded, down in Irvine. As most startups do. It was pretty cool when it lasted though. It was like in the drone industry. So we were doing like software to control drones easily, yeah.
Oh.
That was pretty cool.
So you did Boeing in high school, and
Yeah.
then first year of college you also did Boeing.
Yeah,
right?
first year of
And then
college, sophomore year was the
startup.
Yeah, was a startup, and then from there, next year, applied to a bunch of places again. This time, Google gave me a call back, so I'm like, yeah, I'll interview. Like, I don't know what my chances are, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
I feel like this is always what happens. This is how people feel when Google gives you a call. You're like, I mean, I'm not gonna say no. I ended up at Google junior summer. I was a software engineering intern. I was working on the Chromebook team, and I was doing robotics to help do quality assurance testing for the Chromebooks.
And senior year. And then what happened between that summer between? Oh, you didn't do anything. We went to New Zealand.
We went to New Zealand.
Into vlogs here.
Yeah.
And then you went back, you got your master's in
Robotics and computer vision. Yeah.
Okay, so since you interned at Boeing and Google, which are both like pretty big corporations, but you also did startup, which I feel like a lot of people in the Silicon Valley area are able to do. What's the difference and like the pros and cons of interning, whether it's at a big company or a small company?
I highly recommend interning at a variety of places. Like when you're in college, this is your chance to like really explore and figure out what you like and don't like before you get into like, you know, a full-time commitment.
Yes.
At the big companies, the internships are going to be a little more rigid, a little more strict. Not so much
like more
strict.
structured.
It's more structured. Yeah, that's a good word for it. And you'll likely receive more mentorship actually, because it is more structured program. That being said, like different companies, like the quality of the internships will definitely differ. Boeing is, you know, it's an aerospace company first, right? It's a hardware company first. So doing a software engineering internship at Boeing, I won't say is like it was not like a world-class education on how to do software engineering, right?
Yeah.
For that, like Google really was a great place to be. At the startup, it's more like you get a hodgepodge of different experiences. You get to see very easily what everyone is doing and learn from everyone on the team. Whereas at Google, you're more likely to be like handed a set of, you know, projects, like very well thought out projects and how that's going to like improve you as a software engineer.
I don't know if it's different or anything, but applying to internships, what's the interview process like? Do you have any tips for that? If people are interested in getting into software engineer?
Absolutely. Software engineering internships, and I think engineering positions in general, I sort of feel like it's actually kind of easy. It's not. Okay, it's simple. It's not easy. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
It's very cookie cutter, right? Like you go in, they have like a phone screen to make sure you're not just like a crazy person, right?
Right.
And then what they'll do is they'll have a series of technical interviews, which they might not have for non-engineering positions. But what they do is, you know, they just kind of grill you on the fundamentals. So like for mechanical engineering, I had some coworkers, they'll grill you on the fundamentals of mechanical engineering. For software engineering, they pose a lot of like algorithmic questions, things that you probably won't need in your day-to-day engineering life. For the internship that I got, they actually had instead of a whiteboard interview where you're like writing code on a whiteboard, what they did was they actually had an interview software where it was like kind of a website, and it gave me like, you know, hey, solve this question, and you just like code it. Yeah, you have a time limit, and you just had to code it in the website, which was kind of annoying because like I had my own setup, so then you had to like do it through there, and I didn't really know how to use it. But it's okay because like, you know, through that site they were able to see like exactly what I was typing, so they could see my thought process, and that was actually really interesting and really cool interview experience, I will say. Most of the time though, at big companies especially, it's going to be a whiteboard process where someone, you know, sits in front of you, asks you a question, and you're like on the whiteboard and you're like,
it's like in person,
yeah,
right?
like in person, you have to like write it out on the whiteboard. So some tips to know there: make sure you know your programming language very well, number one, because you do get graded not just on conceptually, but also how well you know the language itself. As an intern, I actually think conceptual knowledge is more important to show off than language knowledge, so you definitely get more leeway there. Second, most important, for engineering interviews, just talk through what you're thinking, because what they're also looking for is a person that they want to work with. Engineering is actually a very collaborative discipline. You're going to be talking to people a lot, bouncing ideas a lot. They're looking for people who can express what they're thinking and is willing to take feedback. So just keep talking. Tell them exactly what you're thinking as you're writing it down.
Just like think out loud.
Literally
basically.
just think out loud. And this is actually a trap a lot of engineers fall into because, programmers, we're kind of shy and awkward and nerdy, right? We don't really we like having a finished product and being like, this is it, guys. This is what happened. And that's like the antithesis of what they're looking for. So just make sure you're personable, charismatic, you talk out loud. That way they can catch you when you make mistakes. And it's not bad that you make mistakes. It's like if they say that you made a mistake and you can be like, well, that's a really good point. Let me think about it here, here, and here. Or maybe that's a lower priority problem. We can talk about it later. That's the kind of behavior they're looking for.
Is there anything that you would say that people should have on their interview or not interview, their resume?
I will always say tailor your resume to the company and the position you're applying for. That is number one.
Agreed.
And just make sure you have all the keywords there because especially for these big companies, what they're doing is there's not a real person.
There's usually a screener.
There's a screening software where they just look for keywords and then a person will look at it. So make sure if you're applying to a full stack position, make sure you say full stack, web dev, list the technologies that you're using. If you know how to use source control, make sure to list that out. Things like that.
I think it'd be really interesting to kind of talk about your career path at Google because you did go in as a software engineer, but obviously, like you mentioned in the beginning, you are now a product manager. So what happened? What was your path at Google? I feel like so many things happened while you were there to get to where you are now. So.
Gosh, yeah, that's a great question and a bit of a story. So
so let's
buckle up,
in.
everyone. Even back in college, I just had this thought in the back of my mind. I'm not going to be a software engineer forever. I enjoy coding. I enjoy problem solving and all of that, but sitting at a computer for 8 hours a day, just coding did not necessarily appeal to me. It didn't feed my heart, my soul. So about a year into my full-time position at Google, this opportunity kind of crossed my path. It kind of dropped through one of the email lists I was on. There is a program at Google called Area 120. It is essentially an internal startup incubator. So you can go and pitch ideas. If the funders like your idea, then you get runway for about 6 months to sort of vet out your idea, come up with a prototype, prove product market fit, and then you re-pitch for more resources. You get to hire more people, turn it into a full project and a full team. This email crossed my path where a team was looking for a co-founder. I was chilling in Daydream, which is Google's VR division, and I was this is a pretty cool job that I have right now, but it didn't feel right to stay here. It looked like a really cool project. I can't actually talk about what it is, but it was really cool. And I was all right, I'll be a co-founder. And so I did that for the next 2 years, actually, and that was a roller coaster ride. First 6 months, it was super hectic, a lot of rapid prototyping, a lot of user testing, talking to user interviews. That's where I learned how to come up with a good pitch on how do you tell people that they should be giving you money, right? And what value is your project bringing to the world? Not just to the world, but also to the company, because remember, this is internal to Google, so we have to prove that it's valuable to Google itself. Afterwards, we did get funded, so that was when I got to go through the process of oh my gosh, how do you hire a team? How do you interview for people? All of that kind of stuff. So it was a huge growth opportunity. We ended up building up to 22 people.
Because you started with 3.
We started with 3. Yeah, we ended up building up to 22 people and got to pre-mass production. I can say it was a consumer hardware product. Pre-mass production before we were canceled, unfortunately. Sad face. I'm over it at this point. Right? And at the end of that journey was a period of self-reflection for me. So
we love that here.
All about the self-reflection here, unclassified.
Currently self-reflecting.
You made me lose my train of thought. While I was in this startup position as a founder, I got to do a lot more than just software engineering, right? I actually did not code very much at all, to be honest. It was a lot more, figuring out what the user needs, figuring out how to put together a compelling pitch and presentation, figuring out how to lead teams, how to make sure people are onboarded. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed sort of the variety and the sort of generalist nature of that role. So that was one. I really enjoyed the generalist nature. Number two was that this project in and of itself was more mission driven than a lot of anything in Silicon Valley. I'll be honest, like most things in Silicon Valley that comes out, they're like, you know, apps for apps.
Yeah. Cool new stuff.
Cool new stuff for people who can afford it. I came to sort of like a few realizations. One, I can't go back to being a software engineer. It just didn't feel right. I wanted to continue pushing and growing as in this generalist nature. Number two, I wanted to shift my career and focus it towards a more mission-driven path. Yeah, I still recognize that I didn't have exactly formal training in product management. There are some best practices that have already been set. These standards are not necessarily like known in most places in the world except Silicon Valley, and I was like literally sitting in one of like the best places to learn. So I was like, okay, even though I'm not like super feeling, you know, going back into big Google and like building just like a new product for Google, I recognize that it is actually very valuable for me to stay, receive some mentorship, officially do the transfer internally. So I decided to stay at Google. It's been a year since then. I joined the Android Automotive team. Android Automotive is public now. We launched, we launched a car. It's freaking cool. So what Android Automotive is, just like a quick from my work right here, is basically taking Android and running it as an OS on your car's infotainment system. What is an infotainment system? So think about like a new luxury car, you know, like that console in the center where like, you know, you click through and you try to like play different things, like music and the radio and Bluetooth and all of that. You know how most cars is like kind of clunky? Android Automotive is just like your phone but on the car.
Oh.
Yeah. And we just launched our first one, the Volvo Polestar 2, earlier this year. So you can check out press releases if you want. It's pretty cool.
How did you know that was what you wanted to do?
It's hard. I will be honest, it's definitely not easy to know, especially because product management, again, like no one really knows what it is until you're doing it. I was lucky enough to have mentors and peers around me who were product managers who said like, hey, I think you'll be pretty good in a product management position. And luckily, Google has a program where you can sort of do like a role switch for 6 months to try out new roles. So what I ended up doing was I found, you know, the Android Automotive team who needed some product help, asked like, hey, can I do this sort of like ladder trial sort of situation? And they took me, which I'm very happy about, very grateful for. Mentors not just in your field, but just like, even just friends, honestly, just peers who work horizontally to you, right?
Every time I have a panic. Like, Mindy, what do I do?
Right, because it expands your horizon of what you know is possible.
Do you have any advice on that? Like, how do you build up your mentor or like your network, and like how do you meet those people?
All right, this is for all of you introverts out there, okay? Just like me, the trick is you just gotta put yourself in situations where it happens naturally. That is literally the trick, right? It's like, okay, for you, right? You're like, a new person joined your company and you're like, I wanna get to know them. So you like, you know, you get coffee with them. And thus a connection is formed, right? It's just building that trust from the beginning. For me, it's like, okay, well, I need to grow my network of product managers. How better to do that than to find a team with a very strong existing network of product managers, join that team, and be forced to work with everyone. And it turns out I like all of them too, which is an extra bonus. No, but seriously, like if you work with people, I think that is actually the fastest way to grow a network. And the thing about product management, another reason I chose it is because product managers, they are kind of like the crux of the team. Like everyone, they are like the figurehead of the team, the representative. The representative. So it is also your job to kind of talk to everyone and to know everyone. So for all you introverts out there, if you have an excuse to like talk to people and get to know people, it suddenly becomes a lot less scary.
Because it's more like, I feel like a lot of times the fear is like, I don't know what to talk to them about. Like, what's the purpose of this conversation?
But like, why are we getting coffee again? Like, I could be.
And it's like hard to be like, oh no, it's just like to get to know each other. And like, blah, blah. But Yeah, that makes it easier when it's
absolutely when it's for your work. It's like
do it.
I need to go talk to like XYZ people because I need to get their input on something. And suddenly now you know XYZ people. Maybe you really hit it off with one of them. There you go. You got a very strong
one. Conversation flows naturally.
Absolutely.
From that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you made the switch to being a product manager now. How did you know it was time to make that career switch?
I always like to advise people when you think about what you want to do in a career, you got to think in a few stages. Think like 5-year stage and also in like 20-year stage, like full career stage, right? Yeah. You got to think about what is a problem that you will enjoy solving that sort of like fulfills your soul, as well as your wallet, because you kind of need to. There's this Japanese concept of ikigai. It's a really cool concept where it's like, there are a lot of different problems in the world. There's the problems that you enjoy solving, that you just enjoy doing. There's problems that society needs to be solved, and there's problems that actually pay money. And like if you can get at the intersection of all three, that's your ikigai. And so I was doing like a lot of self-reflection on like, okay, what are the problems that I enjoy solving? Well, I enjoy being in technology. I don't necessarily enjoy like programming so much as just like thinking about what kinds of problems can technology help with society? How do teams like come together and actually function well and do that? How do we convey to the world like, here's another way to do things and maybe possibly a better way to do things? So those are the kinds of problems I realized I enjoy solving a lot. In terms of what problems the world needed to be solved that really resonated with me, I really enjoy looking at sort of large-scale system-level problems. For me, what that boiled down to was one, sort of modernizing civic architecture, civic technology infrastructure. So think about your typical government website, right? Some things come to mind, it's not probably a very pleasant, like happy face experience trying to navigate that website. And now why is that? Like why are those sites not being built with modern day best practices? Right? Yeah. That is a problem space I'm very interested in. I feel like it's a lot of low-hanging fruits. I love the feeling of taking something that's like,
kind of clunky
and being like, yeah, new shiny, and then like everyone can use it and there's so much benefit to society, so much time saved in the world. And if you want an example of good UI, take a look at the new California DMV government website. I kid you not, it's really nice. That one and like the New Zealand immigration one. It's really...
Which she was on immediately in 2016. You're like, do we move?
And another problem space in the world that's very prevalent today that I find myself just naturally drawn to is disaster response. It's always been like my civic engagement of choice. In the wake of my project cancellation, then I was thinking about, okay, well, if I want to move eventually into, we call it civ tech, into disaster response, what are the skills do I need to pick up, right? That's my 20-year goal, is to like have a full-fledged career in that space. What do I need to do in the next like 2 years, the next 5 years to get myself and set myself up for that? Learning how to identify legacy problems that can be modernized, like when it should be modernized, how it should be done. That is a skill I didn't necessarily have. Learning to convince stakeholders that old systems should be improved. That is a skill that is not necessarily, you can pick it up as a software engineer, but it's not guaranteed. Yeah. Then within these next 5 years, I need to make a change because I won't be able to pick that up as a software engineer. And product management, not just any product management, but product management on Android Automotive specifically actually ticked a lot of boxes of skills I would need in order to move into this space. Right, so Android Automotive, we're working with a highly regulated, very old industry, the automotive industry. Learning how to work across multiple stakeholders, across legal, design, engineering, business, privacy, PR, and of course your customers as well. That's not something you will easily pick up in software engineering. Another reason I made the switch to product management.
I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I don't know if the advice would be different, but like advice for high school graduates and then college graduates and then post-grad.
Well, okay, for high school graduates, as you're going to college, try as many things as possible. This is your time to like try everything. You've got until you're about 24, 25 for the quarter life crisis to kick in, right? So high school graduates, you get to college, it's a big thing, you're like set for the next 4 years. Maybe you stave off the quarter life crisis by doing like a master's or a PhD. But somewhere into like the first or second year of full-time work, you're gonna like suddenly have this internal dread, existential dread of like, oh my god, is this it for the rest of my life? Don't worry, everyone goes through this. Like literally all of my friends, every single one has gone through it.
I went through it mid 2020.
Yeah, you were one of the fastest cases. It took me like 2 to 3 years. It's some of my friends, they started it when they're like 22, they're still in it, they're 27 now. I'm just like, so everyone goes through it. Yeah.
Everyone goes through it in different timelines.
Yeah.
I feel like you might not even go through it 1 or 2 years after full time. I feel like there's like a mini one post-grad when you're like applying for jobs, especially right now after 2020 and everything.
Yeah. This is my advice for first job out of college. It's super stressful, but honestly, almost no one stays at their first job, right? Like their first job is like you need to get something on your resume that's like vaguely related to what you want to do. So make sure that it actually like ties into a little bit what you think you might want to do in the future. But also if it doesn't tie into it at all, that's totally fine. Because I guarantee you, a few years into that first job, you're going to be hit with another crisis going like, is this it for the rest of my life? And the answer is no. It is most likely not it. Almost everyone switches.
It's true.
So it's a process.
Yeah, and I think like what's important about the first job is like go into your first job with things you have in mind in terms of like what you want to grow in and like what you want to learn more from, like what can you take away from working at this place and like from your position there and from the people there, like who are you meeting and all the connections you're able to make and everything like that. Like make the most out of your first.
It's not going to be the perfect job. Just make the most of it. If you can get it to a place with great mentors, that is like the best, almost the best thing you can do in a first job. If all you take from it is, man, I hate this field, never want to do it again, a lot of my friends went through that exact same thing. That's like, then once you hit like your quarter life crisis, that's when you think to yourself, what do I actually want to do? So,
which is like a whole process in it.
It's a whole process in of itself. So. And for that, again, I always recommend this. Try to think long term when you try to think what you want to do. Like think about in one human's life, right? The average career lasts about 25 to 30 years. So you have time for 2 to 3 careers, right? So what are the top 2 to 3 things that you would love to do? That you would love to just dedicate a lot of your time towards. When I say things, I mean like what are some of the problems in the world that you want to be solving, right? What is the impact that you have in the world? Because a lot of this existential dread comes from, oh god, I'm doing this work and I don't know what it's for. It's to like make the company I'm working for richer, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and the people at the top richer.
Yeah, and it's like that's not a fulfilling purpose. So once you figure out the purpose, and it can be as lofty as like, wow, I need to, innovate the disaster response for the entire world, which is not the path to go towards. And it can be small as, I just want to make people smile, right? And that was Walt Disney's purpose. His purpose was, I just want to make people smile. And you can do that in so many ways. You can make people smile by doing entertainment, Walt Disney's way. You can make people smile by education, right? So, like they learn something new, they smile. You can make people smile by literally saving lives. Like as long as you figure out the purpose, everything else kind of falls into place. And again, you don't need just one purpose. You can have a few because you have time in your life for a few. Yeah,
I think like doing the long-term thinking and like what do I want to be in like in 20 years or like what do I want to have accomplished, if you actually like don't know and you're starting or whatever, that it can be really overwhelming. But I think like it can always change is the thing. Like you can have it, but like you can always change. I think we've talked about it before where it's more about knowing your next step is like way more important than like
having it all
your next 10 steps or whatever. Like I think having your next step figured out you just feel better and like
it alleviates a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Right? Because then when people ask you, what are you doing with your life? You're like, I have an answer. It might change tomorrow, but today I have an answer.
Well, that was the end of the interview. Thank you for being on here. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Sitting and staring at you as you're talking, and I think a lot of great advice was dropped in this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you guys have any questions for Mindy about software engineering, product managing, literally anything about life, figure out your quarter life crisis, whatever it is, feel free to comment them down below. And if you have any recommendations or requests for other people you want me to interview and what kind of career fields and industries you want me to touch on, then leave those requests down below as well. See you guys next week. Bye!